Hello, it's Lisa Patterson with Daniel Ravenel Sotheby's International Realty in beautiful historic Charleston, South Carolina. And today I'm joined by Jennifer Flanagin of Kase Law. Hey, Jennifer, how's it going?
Hey, Lisa. Good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, welcome. I really appreciate you doing this for me. Jennifer and I love to get together and give information and knowledge to buyers and sellers in the real estate market of how things work and how to protect themselves. And today we're going to talk about one that sometimes is kind of comical when we have to deal with this, don't you think? So the things that
Frustratingly comical, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Or comically frustrated. Frustrating, yeah.
So I will have buyers and Jennifer will be the closing attorney. And, a number of my buyers come from other states. And one of the things I love to talk to them about is, and Jennifer and I do a lot of videos on that, real estate transactions in South Carolina are totally different than what if you're coming from another state. And one of the things that we run into a lot, I'll have a buyer or Jennifer sees it with other clients, is they will be under contract in South Carolina. They don't understand if they're coming from New York, for example, that the realtors do the contract. They negotiate the contract and everything. And then we have a closing attorney. We don't have a title company. And in New York, for example, the attorneys do everything. The agents just kind of show them houses. The attorneys negotiate the contract and all. So we will have buyers that'll get through the process, be under contract, and they'll say, I'm going to send my contract to my attorney in New York or my attorney in New Jersey or my attorney in Florida. And Jennifer, why should they not do that?
Where to begin, Lisa? So first of all, so everyone understands, if anybody is outside of South Carolina is an attorney state. So that does mean that to handle a real estate transaction, whether it's a purchase, sale, or even a refinance, you do have to have an attorney. You have to retain an attorney licensed in South Carolina.
Right.
So you have to have a South Carolina to handle a transaction for a real property in South Carolina. So number one, you can't just send it to your New York attorney and think that you covered your bases. You have to have an attorney here represent you. That is South Carolina law. So every buyer, every seller, every borrower for a refinance, even a home equity line, you have to have an attorney here in South Carolina. And it's for the protection of the client. It's to protect the buyer, make sure they have everything they need. For the seller, make sure they have everything they need. For a borrower, make sure the lender is following their regulations and rules. So it really is for the protection of the client. So you do have to have an attorney here. That's first off. Second of all, I think everyone needs to understand, and I can speak from personal experience because I was and am licensed in Virginia, and I moved down from Virginia, and I worked in Virginia, which is completely different. It's a title state. It's not an attorney state.
Exactly.
You don't have to have an attorney. So really every state is a little bit different. And coming down from Virginia, I think what people need to understand is when you are in your specific jurisdiction, and I mean specific jurisdiction like Charleston or Columbia or Greenville, or even within the state of South Carolina, every local realtor association here at CTAR has its own contract. And this has been fine-tuned, and it was prepared by attorneys, and it's modified about every year or two, updated, changed. And this is the contract that realtors use in, for instance, Charleston. They use the CTAR contract. And so the first thing to understand is that if a realtor receives a contract that's all marked up from any attorney, they will absolutely look at it and say, well, I'm not taking that. Exactly. That will absolutely be their first reaction, because they use this contract for a reason. They know this contract. They understand the terms. They are very reticent to accept a contract that has been marked up by any attorney, particularly an out-of-state attorney. And of course, the reason for that is because every state is different, and every jurisdiction, even within that state, has its own concerns. For instance, in Charleston, we got to think about flooding. In other areas of the state, they don't have to have that concern. So this contract really is specifically written for our area. And realtors do a good job and understand it. And good realtors, let me clarify. Good realtors like Lisa do a very good job explaining this contract to her clients. And if she receives the contract, if she's representing a seller and receives the contract from a buyer, that's completely different or completely marked up, she's absolutely going to be on alert, because she's not going to be as able to explain this contract to her sellers as she would if it's used on this form. And so that is different from New York. This contract is a template contract, and agents can write in, but they know the contract, versus New York, where attorneys write the contract every time, and it's different and it varies. So it's just it complicates things, honestly.
It gets the
And I'm an
buyers
attorney.
very confused as well.
It confuses the buyers, it confuses the sellers. And as an attorney, I can say it, attorneys usually do complicate things. And so, when you get your attorney out of state, knowing full well that you have to have an attorney here, again, that's really going to complicate things, because now you have your attorney here, which you legally have to have, and then you're sending everything to an out-of-state attorney, which does things very different. It really becomes much more complicated than it really needs to be. The best piece of advice is, number one, the person you should listen to is your agent, because they're the first line of defense. They're the ones who have the contract, who are writing the contract, who are negotiating with the other agent. That's all the agent's responsibilities in South Carolina. So your agent is the first person you need to talk to and trust. And you got to hire a good agent like Lisa. I mean, that is the person who is going to explain this to you at the very beginning. Attorneys don't even get involved most of the time until the contract's ratified.
Right.
We don't even get that. We're not even involved. We don't even know what's happening until that contract is ratified. The agents are doing all the work. The agents are doing the negotiating, the explaining, the drafting. That is the agent. Now, if they have questions about certain verbiage or something, they certainly will call us. And I always tell Lisa to have her tell her clients that they have, a legal question during the process, to call me. She usually can explain everything to them. But if they have questions, they certainly can call me. But the heavy lifting in the beginning, and really for the most part, the transaction is really done by the agents in South Carolina. So it's really, really, really important for the clients to trust their agent, because they need to listen to their agent.
Yeah. And what happens, they're under contract, everything's done, they have their closing attorneys, and then things come up and they start asking other attorneys or their friends that are attorneys. We had one last year. Actually, it was a storm was going on. We had a hurricane come through. I'll never forget this one.
Me either.
We had a closing date. Well, if a hurricane's going on, we can't close on that date. You were actually flooded in. You couldn't even get out of your neighborhood to get downtown. Yeah. And I had a listing, and we had a buyer that was just adamant that, we could not close on that day, and that my seller was in breach of contract. He's asking one of his buddies that is an attorney that's not a real estate attorney, no way, shape, or form, that gave him horrible advice where he was actually going to be in breach of contract. So
yeah.
Don't be calling your friend that's a finance attorney or a divorce attorney or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, if you have high blood pressure, you're not going to go to your dermatologist, right? I mean, exactly. It's very similar. I mean, your dermatologist, they went to medical school, they may be able to give you some advice, but as everybody knows, and particularly in law school, it really is, you learn your craft through your practice area. I mean, I am certainly not going to give people advice on corporate litigation. Yes, I took a class in law school, but really, that is not my practice area. That would be malpractice for me to give somebody advice on that. And so you really need to, if you have a real estate question, go to your real estate attorney, ask your agent, ask your real estate attorney. These are people who specialize in this area. They can give you advice. It's not smart to go to a podiatrist when you have a brain injury. It's just, you got people like to stay in their lanes. They should stay in their lanes. And it's important for clients to turn to the people that are representing them. And the biggest thing, as an attorney, it is very frustrating when other attorneys who aren't specialists get involved. But what's really frustrating is when clients don't listen to their agents. That really frustrates me more than anything else, because I work with good agents like Lisa, and Lisa knows what she's talking about. And it's frustrating when clients don't listen. that
It's very frustrating. And then what really happens, they get bad advice from these
yeah,
other attorneys that shouldn't even really be giving them advice. And it really complicates things, and it
it does.
complicates the whole process. And then that comes to the other thing. So I was an attorney. I do not practice law.
Mhm.
And I reach out to Jennifer a lot of times when I want to really look into how to draft or craft something. And, that is another thing. We see realtors do it all the time. And I remind realtors that I help within my own office. Don't be changing things on this contract. You're starting to practice
Yeah.
law, and you are not an attorney.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. That's a great point. I mean, the contract is a form contract put out by CTAR, accepted by agents in this area. But if you're going to change verbiage, if you're an agent, changing verbiage, first person you check with is always your broker. They're the first person you check with. They'll give you advice, and if they think it needs to escalate, you need to talk to an attorney, they'll advise you of that. But you do always want to check with your broker as an agent, because they may have certain other parameters, even outside the legal ones, that they want you to stick to certain ones. So always check with your broker, and then they'll refer you to an attorney.
Exactly. And I
Yeah.
know we've had certain situations where I've reached out to you and you've done particular documents pertaining to certain
Mhm.
situations, and we
Yeah.
do it with addendums to the contract because, I'm not an attorney any longer, and I'm
Mhm.
not going to practice law and put something out there that would put my buyer or seller at risk. So
Yeah.
the biggest thing people need, as you said, first of all, trust your agent. Make sure you hire an agent that you trust and you know is doing a good job for you. And then, your closing attorney, you have to trust in your
Mhm.
closing attorney and have a good relationship with them. One thing I can say about Jennifer, if you are working with Jennifer as your closing attorney, I mean, you have her cell number, you call her, you're dealing with her directly, you're getting it straight from her. You're not dealing, some law firms, you're dealing with the paralegal. You don't even see the attorney till you go into close. That is not the case when working with Jennifer. That's one of the reasons I love working with her. And my clients love working with her. So just remember those things. Trust your realtor, and you work with your chosen closing attorney, not your friends or your attorney from where you're coming from. It just makes things complicated. I appreciate it,
Absolutely.
Jennifer, as always.
Thank you, Lisa.
And
Thank
thank
you,
you
Lisa.
for always taking good care of my clients. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. All right.